So, I wanted to talk a little bit about presence at the start of our day today, and remembering the way that I'm presenting the development of the sense of self, the self-image, that starting at birth we have an undivided unity, what's called the dual unity with presence in particular, and the love of the absolute. And we can rest in that, we recognize it, we feel that clothing, clean clothes, and food just come to us as infants pretty much when we need it, not exactly, but it comes steadily enough if our family is doing okay and the people aren't too caught up in their own psychological issues. Then they'll try and meet the baby's needs as best they can. Of course, no parent is ever attuned perfectly to their child at all times. It's just not possible. And at some point, the child realizes that the unity begins to break down because they're recognizing that the need for affection, for clean clothes, for food comes from inside. The hunger is inside this body, and the solution comes from outside. So it begins to break down where we see the duality. I need those big people to bring me stuff to stay alive. And so the baby will begin to do a variety of things. Will do things that it can tell that the adults like. So will be baby charming and will, in a way, trying to bond with the adult. And so this is when we each make the turn away from the absolute, away from the presence and love that we've been really basking in, and we commit to the family or the caregivers. And it seems that the majority of us take that turn away from presence and love of the absolute as a personal rejection. Something was wrong with me, and in presence and love withdrew. They said, nope, something's not right here, we're not staying, we're leaving. And in fact, as I've described, we're the ones that elect to turn away, and yet we always take it as a rejection. And also, since we can't pinpoint the adults, we can't turn on them and say that they're the cause of this breakdown, of this unity with presence and love, because we need these adults to keep us alive. So we have to be very careful to not upset them. We get if they decide they don't want to help us anymore, we're going to be in some serious trouble. So we invest in that family, and we look to these caregivers as being almost godlike creatures. They do hold our life in their hands, quite literally. And again, we turn away, we take it as a rejection, and this begins developing some of the core rejections that we hold. And we hold these with a great deal of confidence. We hold them as very, very true, that something in us was so broken, so underdeveloped, so lacking, that presence and love threw us out. And that becomes the basis of our inner dysfunction. And then our personality gets structured on top of that to communicate and show the outside world and ourselves that we're not that deeply wounded, broken piece that we think we are. So we spend most of our life trying to get people to, look over here at the birdie, don't look here at this individual, because you'll see something broken in here if you look in here. So we spend our time with all the doing, all our performance, and we find what we're good at, what our birth families reflect back to us that they like about us, and we try and do more of that. And that's part of how our personalities develop. We see that there's a need in our birth family for a certain kind of behavior. We do that behavior, we get recognized, we get affection and love and recognition, and so we do more of it. And that's the pattern of our life. And during the spiritual path, we're working on checking into that, seeing what's true about it, what's not true about it, and whatever's not true we have to let go of. And so that becomes the journey in spiritual development, particularly the post-Kensho, post-awakening work, is a lot around looking at the various behaviors and attitudes we carry and testing to see what's true and what's not true. And then as we find and recognize what's not true, we find ways to either convert that to something that is wholesome and truthful, or we learn to let go of that. So hopefully it is impinging less on our free movement. So a lot of this, as we're developing, is we're collecting and organizing our concepts on how we are and how the world works. And the concepts in our thinking develop in a way that we link memories and relationships. And we create this tapestry for ourselves of this is reality, this is the world. And we also begin to invest in the concept of time. That things happen in the past, and we look to the future, we plan for the future. And so the brain research folks have concluded that the average person spends something like 90% of their thought process is devoted to the past and the future, and only about 10% at most is dedicated to the present moment. So this is the other aspect in spiritual development we're working on, is we're shortening the past and the future, bringing them closer and closer to the present moment, which is where we want to land. And like when we're meditating, that's where we're really bringing our attention, is to this moment, what's happening in this breath. So as we make contact with the Absolute and return to contact with pure love and with the presence, we also come in contact with pure awareness. Pure awareness is awareness without concept. So there's no reflective capability. There's just the direct knowing, which develops our intuitive knowing. We learn things based on contact and a kind of feeling. We develop a sophisticated understanding of things through developing our inner intuition. So in terms of practice, it's why I've introduced the practices, the I am not practice, which helps us uncouple from a lot of the concepts that we hold about ourselves and the significance that we invest in things like our memories and emotions and a variety of others. So the more that we can step away from that, pull back a little bit, we have a little more room to work and see who we are. If we're not our memories and we're not our emotions, we're not these various things, not even this body, what's left? Who are we? That begins the exploration. Now the other practice I've introduced on occasion, the I am practice, where we will practice, and this orients us more directly to the presence. I find that for a lot of people, the am part of the I am really has a kind of generativeness, a kind of development, and people can plug into it and they can feel more drawn toward presence. Some other people have been using the term being also, which seems to be beneficial for a smaller group, but still does support that knowing. So with presence, the main quality with presence is a here-ness, an immediacy, the beingness of the Absolute. So it's like the present moment becomes more full, more nuanced. There's greater content in the present moment when we are landed more fully in presence. So it's one of the benefits of that. And it lets us step away from all of the conceptual framework and the conceptual understanding of ourselves and the world. We abide a little more in. One of my Zen teachers had a teaching called Don't Know Mind. And that's the don't know mind. We don't actually know a lot. And so the more that we can recognize what we don't know and be willing to stay there with the question mark, it's quite beneficial as we pull back from all the certainties that we carry. And by holding this all as a question mark, it really invites greater possibilities. It's like we're so binary that often when we have a decision to make in life, we'll see maybe a couple of possible choices. And as we pull back more from into not knowing, all of a sudden the possibilities and choices multiply. We have a lot of choices available that we couldn't see before because we were investing our sense of self into the equation.